Hi guys, it's your friend in the neighborhood Wayne Wine from TNL Now, and today we will be reading a little something from Katherine Johnson. Sometimes the dead won't stay buried. That's the little preface for this title called Sawbones. It is the first book that I actually finished after about 7 years of not reading. And the book is amazing. It's set in the 1700s in England. The book is about a surgeon's apprentice who has his life upended and completely turned around, and he meets a very unlikely friend who ends up joining him on a journey that changes both their lives. So a little bit about the preface, a little bit about what the book is. Medical science is flourishing, and in London, the illegal trade in corpses has never been more alive. At the dissection table of his master, apprentice Ezra McAdams has learnt that each body... At the dissection table of his master, Ezra McAdams learns that each body tells a tale. And it's about one of these bodies that he meets on this table that sends him on this very interesting journey. Let's dive right in to chapter 1 itself. Chapter 1. Surgeon's Operating Theatre, St. Bartholomew's Hospital, Smithfield, London. 31st October 1792. The room was packed. Students and interested observers all crammed onto the benches that were set out around the room. And behind them even more stood. Squeezing into any available space, the air was thick with the smell of tobacco and damp wool. The rain outside was unforgiving. On the table lay a body. A few years younger than himself, Ezra thought, white with fear. His leg, mangled, twisted with flesh from all shades of dark red blood to livid speckles of scarlet, with white splinters of bone just scraping through the skin. The leather fastenings dug into his skin just above the knee, almost as tight as a tourniquet. Two porters were holding his arms, keeping his upper body still. The boy fell from a ladder. Mr. William McAdams, surgeon, said while tying on his leather apron. The boy said nothing. Yes, sir, Ezra McAdams said. Ezra was 16 and had been apprenticed. Ezra was 16 and had been apprenticed to Mr. McAdams since he could remember. He had the man's surname, but that was simply because he had none of his own. Ezra was 16 and had been apprenticed to Mr. McAdams since he could remember. He had the man's last name, but simply because he had none of his own. He was set up to fix tiles. He's a roofer, that's his trade. The boy on the table nodded, mute with fear. Ezra passed Mr. McAdams the skin knife and flesh knife. He laid out the bone saw, freshly sharpened, an artery hook, the wool for laying over the stump, and bandages for wrapping afterwards. The boy's lip moved soundlessly, and a tear ran down the side of his cheek. Ezra could tell it was the Lord's Prayer over and over. Gentlemen, William McAdams addresses the room, one knife in his hand. Your watches. I guarantee the fastest amputation ever performed anywhere in the world. The boy whimpered. The surgeon smiled down at him, a paternal smile. Ezra felt every single soul in the room hold their breath. Inside his head, he began to count. The knives flashed, the skin was peeled back, the flesh parted away. The boy was screaming and screaming. So, Mr. McAdams stuck out his hand. 20 seconds, Ezra counted. That was good. Mr. McAdams' skill was flawless. Ezra passed his master the saw and took the knives, wiped them clean of blood and flesh. Then there was a sound of sewing, bone resisting metal. 1 minute. The boy on the table was suddenly silent, his head lolled sideways, passed out with pain. Ezra hoped to God he would regain consciousness eventually. More sawing. The creak and brittle snap of bone cut in two. 2 minutes. The mangled, bloody leg fell with a soft thud onto the operating theatre. The surgeon stood back, wiping blood on his apron, with the crowd applauding. He consulted his watch. 2 minutes, 5 seconds, gentlemen. The crowd was on their feet. I think you'll find that unsurpassed, Ezra. He waved his hand towards the stump. Tidy this up. Ezra flapped the skin back over the stump and padded it with gauze and lamb's wool. While the tourniquet was still in its place, there was no excess blood. He bandaged tightly, swaddling the poor boy's legs as if it were a baby, firmly tucking the ends in. All the while imagining the life with only one leg. At least it was a life. And Mr. William McAdams was the best in the business. With luck, there'd be no necrotizing flesh or gangrene. Ezra cleaned and packed the surgeon's instruments. Across the room, Mr. McAdams had gone around, glad-handing the crowd, directing most of the eager to his anatomy lecture at his house on Great Windmill Hill. Every Tuesday and Thursday, the mysteries of the human body laid bare. That was just 2 pages of chapter 1, and this book spoke to me in so many different ways. Not only because I love a good murder mystery that this book has, but also it's because Ezra's life is upended from what he knows and what he's comfortable with. It gets to a point where he no longer knows what his future holds. And in that moment of grief, in that moment of despair, he meets a friend, right? Her name is Loveday Finch. She's the daughter of a magician who also mysteriously dies and crosses paths with each other. Loveday is a firecracker. She's someone who will never let you get away with anything, and she always stands her ground, much like one of my good friends. And she reminds me a lot of Loveday. And I have to say, this book I'm so glad for, like, I was able to pick up from one of the previous Big Bad Wolf sales. So if you are looking to dive into some murder mystery or even a really good thriller novel, you should definitely check out the Big Bad Wolf sale happening online on the 1st to the 3rd of October. The links are in the description and on the link right here. So give it a click and go check it out.